Please be seated. Good afternoon, honourable members, ladies and gentlemen. Are there any notices? Member for Breitling.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I give notice on the next meeting day I shall present a bill entitled Fines and Penalties Recovery Legislation Amendment Bill 2024 Serial 9.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I give notice that on the next General Business Day I shall present a motion calling on the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly to formally acknowledge the unacceptable rates of domestic, family and sexual violence within the Northern Territory and endorse the formation of a bipartisan delegation to Canberra comprising of members of the CLP government, the Labor opposition and the crossbench, standing alongside victim survivors, DFSV experts and frontline workers. The purpose of this delegation will be to advocate for significant federal investment in initiatives aimed at combating domestic, family and sexual violence, underscoring our collective commitment to addressing this critical issue.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I give notice that on the next General Business Day I shall move that this Assembly recognises that all members of this Assembly have firmly committed to addressing family, domestic and sexual violence as a priority, acknowledges that domestic, family and sexual violence is our true crime and safety crisis and this crisis disproportionately impacts Aboriginal women in the Northern Territory, recognises the findings of the coronial inquest into the deaths of Kuman Rabancha, Kumanjai Haywood, Miss Yunupingu and Nayu Ragurk, which highlight urgent reforms needed to protect Aboriginal women and all women and children from domestic, family and sexual violence and ensure victims are seen and heard, commits to fully resourcing and implementing all recommendations of the coroner arising from these inquests as a matter of urgency, further commits to working in partnership with Aboriginal and frontline communities and services to ensure effective implementation of these reforms. This Assembly stands united in addressing the domestic, family and sexual violence, crime and safety crisis and ensuring all women and children are safe, protected and supported. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also seek leave to table the 35 recommendations of the coronial.
I'm not sure that that's appropriate at this point, but are there any objections to that? No. Then
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah. Are there any more notices, petitions, any petitions for tabling today? Are there any questions? Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, too many Territory women have lost their lives to domestic and family violence. Too many Territory women, young people and children are subjected to violence in their everyday lives. This issue is above politics. Territory Labor is proposing a bipartisan delegation to Canberra comprising of members of the CLP government, Territory Labor opposition and the crossbench, standing alongside victim survivors, DFSV experts and frontline workers to collectively advocate for needs-based funding for the Northern Territory. Chief Minister, will you agree to lead this delegation so that our frontline services across the Northern Territory have the resources that they need to combat family, domestic and sexual violence across the Northern Territory?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Opposition Leader for the question. And of course, a very important topic that we're debating extensively in the Parliament today, given the coroner's recommendations that were handed down yesterday. And it's very important, and Opposition Leader talks about leadership. Within 2 weeks of being in government, Madam Speaker, I was down in Canberra with the Prime Minister, with National Cabinet, championing this very issue for needs-based funding for the Territory. The percentage we're being allocated just isn't going to cut it. In fact, it will barely touch the sides. And to have Senator McCarthy on TV this morning, essentially saying that the Territory's got to do their fair share isn't fair, because there has been a bipartisan commitment to the $180 million to go into dealing with this issue. And of course, we're very committed to working with the opposition and in fact any members of the Parliament who are looking to try and imprint upon the Commonwealth just how important their role is in the Territory. So yes, Opposition Leader, I've got no problem with anything that you've proposed. We're very happy to do that. We're very mindful, of course, as well, that we have a Labor federal government, and you've just come out of government in the last 8 years, opposition leader, and if you haven't been able to yield an outcome after 8 years with your own Labor mates in the top job in Canberra, you know, I can only imagine our efforts will be in vain. But we're willing to try everything. We're certainly doing what we can in this short space of time we've had. And Minister Carl has been doing a power of work in this space to make sure that what we're spending money on is actually going to be going towards making people safer. And so I might actually hand my question over to Minister Carl. I know she's made her ministerial report today, but as the portfolio minister, she can speak more to what our concerns are around the coronial and what we're doing going forward. But I've got no issue with what's being proposed.
Minister Carl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll just make the note that I think it is absolutely vital that we do not rush a response. The coroner took 17 months to complete the work on this inquest, and there are, as has been noted already today, 35 recommendations. To rush forward and not give those recommendations the consideration they deserve would be irresponsible. To not go out to the community and consult with the community and workers and service providers on the ground as the best way forward would also be irresponsible. I was actually heartened at a meeting I just held in the lunch break with the National Commissioner for Domestic, Family and Sexual Violence, who advised me that she felt that our approach forward to take a moment, to take a review and take a step back was a wise one, and that is absolutely what we will do.
Your time's up. Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, crime remains an ongoing issue in our community. On Monday morning at 2 a.m, the Domino's pizza shop at Karama was broken into again. The perpetrators stole 3 EFTPOS machines and caused significant damage by ripping fire extinguishers off the wall and vandalising the small business premise. I spoke with the store manager, who was naturally angry but not surprised, given this business has been broken into often over recent years. However, she and her father were pleased that the CLP government has introduced stronger legislation to help reduce crime. Chief Minister, can you please update the House on the CLP's government's new reducing crime laws and how they are now helping to keep Territorians safe?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Karama, and I just know how passionate you are about reducing crime for Territorians, and in your electorate, they are some of the hardest hit communities in the Northern Territory, and people have had enough. They are sick and tired of it. Businesses are closing, people are leaving town because of it, they're leaving all of our towns because of it, and it's not acceptable. It's absolutely not acceptable, and that's why we're in government now, Member for Karama, because we took a very clear commitment to the election to reduce crime, empower our police and deal with these issues head on, and that's exactly what we've gotten to work and done. In the first sittings of Parliament, just 8 weeks into our government, we passed the Reducing Crime Package, a suite of laws, unprecedented number of laws and police powers on urgency through this Parliament so that we could get our police on the right footing and give them what they need. And on day one, the very next day after the election, Member for Karama, I sat down with the Police Commissioner and I looked him in the eye and I said, we support your police. We will do whatever it takes to give you the support and the resources you need to make our community safe. And we've followed through with the powers that they've asked for, and that work continues. This is just the beginning. It is just the beginning, and crime continues to be completely unacceptable and out of control. And so some of the data we've got, in its early days, it's literally been not even a month since our laws have come into power, but we have had some really great results so far. Wanding operations have increased. So there was a significant wanding operation in Katherine, which saw 399 Territorians scanned, or people scanned, I should say. 20 positive results, meaning that they had weapons on them. There were 5 arrests out of that, 1 notice to appear, and 6 cautions, and all sorts of items seized: scissors, screwdrivers, knives, even large machetes, if you can imagine people carrying carrying that on their person while they're out and about in the community. We also had some scanning in Palmerston where 40 people were scanned, scissors were seized during those scanning operations, and at Casuarina as well where 19 people were scanned. And of course, by giving police better powers, they've been able to do that a lot more often. Our ram raid legislation has seen 17 charges laid for ram raiding, 5 for post and boast legislation, and 23 infringement notices around our new public drinking laws. So you can see already in a short amount of time that we're able to make an impact. Laws do matter. They matter as a deterrent. They matter in setting the community standards in which our community all expect, and they matter in giving police the tools they need to be able to keep us safe. And so the work continues, Member for Karama. It is still at unacceptably high levels, but we are committed to seeing this through to make the territory a safer place.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, on the 5th of November, you told media that you would be campaigning for needs-based funding to tackle the Northern Territory's domestic and family violence crisis. You also said you would honour the former Territory Labor government's additional $180 million investment into this national shame. Yesterday, the Northern Territory coroner handed down a report into the tragic deaths of 4 Territory women and called for urgent action on domestic and family violence. Frontline Services, Chief Minister, are yet to see a single cent from your government for the needs that they have called for. You've been in government now for 13 weeks, just over 3 months. Chief Minister, what are you going to do when you told Territorians that you were serious about tackling family and domestic violence?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And of course, this was a commitment first made by the then Labor government and then the CLP. And so if money hasn't been spent, Opposition Leader, I think you need to find a mirror and take a good hard look. Because the reality is your government had 8 years to do something about this, and instead all they did was increase domestic violence by 82%. So if you made hollow promises, Opposition Leader, that's on you. You've served as Attorney General, as Health Minister and a range of other portfolios, as has your team. What we're doing is not what you did. And we are very, very clear about status quo not being an option for our government. And so Minister Karl has shown exceptional leadership on this issue, and the critics can come out and decry us all they want. At the end of the day, what matters to us is that Territorians are safe, that our actions speak louder than our words, and that the finite resources of Territory taxpayers' dollars is spent to go as far as humanly possible to achieve better outcomes for our people. That, at its core, is what we want to achieve. And so we're not really interested in all of the semantics around this issue and whatever hype and hyperbole you want to bring to it, Opposition Leader. The facts remain that in the last 8 years, domestic violence has gone through the roof. We've already acted to strengthen the law. And come January, when our bail reform kicks in, that will be even more important. Because we know that domestic violence perpetrators are often repeat offenders, that our prison has got plenty of DV offenders in it, and there are more strong action that we need to take in this space, coupled with, and obviously wearing my police minister hat to that extent, coupled with the work then that the Department of Children and Families under the leadership of Minister Karl has to do around dealing with the expenditure of that money prudently. We've talked already today, there is a ministerial report before the House on this very topic. Minister Karl has very clearly explained we will not rush to make judgment on the recommendations. We will take our time as the coroner took her time to deliberate. We will make sure that the action plan that Labor prepared is actually going to deliver outcomes, because I'm not standing here, Madam Speaker, because Territorians wanted me to deliver Labor's plan. I'm standing here as Chief Minister because Territorians wanted me to deliver the CLP's plan with my team. And that is exactly what we're doing. And so people can talk a lot about this issue and try and use it to politicise the issue or even make themselves look more important than they really are. I don't mind which one of those categories you sit in, Opposition Leader, but what we won't do is rush, waste Territorians' money and put the lives of more women at risk.
Member for Wanguri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, key to our government's plan to rebuild the economy is our new game, Changing Territory Coordinator. I know many businesses in my electorate who will benefit from quicker and more streamlined approval processes. Chief Minister, can you please update the House on how all businesses, and in fact all Territorians, can contribute to this exciting, much-needed new legislation?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. A fantastic question from the member for Wanguri. And look, we are so excited about this piece of economic reform, member for Wanguri. It is a game changer and we're proud of it. It shows that we're drawing a line in the sand and we recognise that a strong economy means stronger territory. It means stronger families. It means a stronger outcome for our people. When the economy is up, when the economy is strong, everyone does better. Governments can deliver more services. They can put more funding to support people who are vulnerable, disadvantaged. They can allocate more funding to important demands like domestic and family violence. That's why a strong economy is so important. It's how we support our AMBOs, our police, run hospitals, schools and build roads. And that's all been lost on a Labor government who for 8 years didn't understand the economy and instead talked into the wind, never delivering. And that's in stark contrast to the CLP. The Territory Coordinator legislation, the Territory Coordinator policy we took to the 2020 and 2024 election. We then did an exposure discussion paper about the bill, and got some feedback, which helped us then inform the drafting of the exposure draft bill, which we've then put out into the public. And consultation is open on that right through to the 17th of January, and I encourage...
Please take your seat, Chief Minister. What's your point of order, member for Daly?
The Chief Minister's misleading the chamber. It wasn't out for consultation to the public.
I'm sorry. If you're going to claim that, you need to move a motion to that effect. You're saying that she misled Parliament? You need to make a substantive motion. Please continue, Chief Minister.
I can say it again in case the member didn't hear. We circulated a discussion paper to get feedback, and then that helped us inform the drafting of the bill, which we have now put out to public consultation. That will stay open until the 17th of January. Everyone is welcome to provide feedback on that. We will then, in February, introduce the legislation into the Parliament and refer it to the Legislative Scrutiny Committee that the CLP created to increase public consultation and public scrutiny of legislation, something that the previous Labor government scrapped, the previous Labor government that the opposition leader was a member of. And so not only has it been through a discussion paper, a public draft, the Scrutiny Committee will then also come to Parliament for debate. This will be the most ventilated piece of legislation we've seen in a long time, Madam Speaker, and we're proud of it because we know that this is going to be a game changer for the Territory, that a strong economy means strong outcomes for our people, and we are excited to be driving the change that Territorians gave us a mandate to deliver. Status quo is not going to cut it. We are not here to deliver more of the same. We're here to change things up and drive a better Territory for everyone.
Member for Guadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, the Coroner, Elizabeth Armitage, has called for immediate action to address domestic and family violence. The domestic and family violence sector has called on you to immediately roll out the $180 million additional investment announced. Minister, your response is that you are auditing the Northern Territory Domestic Violence Framework, a framework that was created by experts, by victim survivors, by the sector. Minister, you have said that you are going to audit this, rather than listening to the sector and funding the implementation, rather than auditing an audit. Minister, can you explain to Frontline Services why you aren't providing desperately needed funding to them right now to protect Territory women and children? Why are you auditing an audit that they were involved in?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The very first thing I did in my role as Minister for Children and Families, Child Protection and Prevention for Domestic Violence was go out and talk to frontline workers, to go out and speak to service providers, to go out and hear firsthand what is happening on the ground. I then posed the question to the department, how are we sure that these programs are working when all I can see is a tragic increase in the incidence of domestic violence assaults in our community? How can we possibly say what we are doing is working when all we can see is damage, broken families? And how can we say what we are doing is working when we continue to lose valuable members of our community, mums, sisters, grandmas, aunties, when we have lost 8 more people since June this year? It is unforgivable to then step back and say, we'll just keep doing what we've always done. It is shameful. But to do more, you have to first know what you are doing works, where it's not working, why it's not working, and where can you improve the outcomes. I asked how we were measuring, and the response was, well, we don't. And then I did some research and found that the framework actually says in the framework that you are touting as the answer to the prayer of the previous government, it is not feasible, cost-effective or appropriate to formally evaluate all aspects of the domestic family sexual violence framework. But review is required, particularly of key components. That is written into the actual framework. That is shameful. I cannot think of a single circumstance.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order, Member for Guadja?
Point of order, Madam Speaker. 110 relevance. There is an evaluation. It's being undertaken at the moment. You might want to find the facts and figures of your own department.
Member for Guadja, take your seat. That's not a point of order. Continue, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I cannot think of a single circumstance where it's okay to continue to operate programs that aren't able to be evaluated properly. I can't think of a single circumstance where it's okay to continue to progress things that are not working on the ground, and I cannot think of a single circumstance where it's okay to progress recommendations where you haven't actually sat down with the people who may have to follow through on those and asked them for their input and their support and their advice.
Member for
As I said,
quiet. Quiet, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Renewables. Minister, the CLP committed to supporting Territorians in easing cost of living pressures. Minister, can you please advise how the solar rooftop battery scheme and feed-in tariff will support our power system and provide relief to households with electricity bills?
Minister for Renewables.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for that question, because this is a great question, because it not only supports Territorians but also shows that the CLP is delivering on commitments during this election campaign. This is a policy that we took to the election, and the CLP had an astounding win, and we've got 17 seats in here because the CLP had a clear plan in this election. We were going to make the Territory safe, we're going to rebuild the economy, and we're going to restore our lifestyle. And that's what we've done, and this is another example of how we have lived up to those commitments. Madam Speaker, the CLP is committed to easing the cost of living pressures, and what we've done, unlike Labor, who I must say, they actually reduced the battery bonus. They come out at $6,000 and they say how good they are and how they look after Territorians and how they support renewables. And what they did is they actually reduced the bonus. They actually made it harder for Territorians to get batteries to be able to operate their virtual power plant at home, because they reduced it. They cut it. It was 6, they brought it down to 5. We, the CLP, have taken it back up to $12,000, Madam Speaker. $12,000, Madam Speaker. And what that means, Madam Speaker, is if you're at home and you want to support renewables, you can have your solar system, And there's about 20,000 people who've got that now, but you can now have a battery pack that will support your use during the night time. So it will ease the cost of living pressures, because during the night when you're at home and you're cooking and you're using your air conditioning and your ceiling fan, you can run off a battery power that you've stored during the day, which will reduce your power bills. Reduce your power bills, Madam Speaker. And that's what Labor failed to do. They failed Territorians. We know the crime rate's out of control. We know there's a cost of living crisis because this Labor government failed us, because just off the top of my head, I think it's $11 billion worth of debt in 8 years, $11 billion worth of debt. So it just goes to show, Madam Speaker, this Labor government have got no idea about cost of living. So the CLP are delivering our commitment. And the second part of that, Madam Speaker, is also going to increase the tariff feed-in rate during peak times, which is 3 till 9 p.m, up to about 18 cents per kilowatt. So if you're managing your system at home, Madam Speaker, and you want to export power to, again, reduce your power bill, you can do that. You can do that in the afternoon, Madam Speaker, because we are about supporting Territorians, easing the cost of living, and that's what this program will do. You'll be able to buy a bigger battery, and you'll be able to get some feed-in tariff back to reduce your power living, to make sure that your bank balance at the end of the day is easy, because then you can spend your money on your children's lunch, or you can go down to the shop and buy something and spend the money into the community, unlike the Labor government who just spend, spend, spend.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, in the findings of the coroner, the deaths of the 4 Territory women, the coroner identified alcohol as a contributing factor to the frequency and severity of domestic violence assaults, and particularly provided a recommendation, Recommendation 5. Minister, do you support your government's removal of the minimum floor price, proven alcohol harm reduction strategy, which has been found to reduce domestic violence assaults, which has also been researched by an independent health research with Menzies School of Health?
Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The wonderful thing about research and statistics and figures is you can pretty much make them say whatever you want.
Oh my God!
The fact is that the questions that are asked around volume of alcohol being consumed do not take into account the alcohol content of the alcohol being consumed. And I can tell you from personal experience, having witnessed the changes that occurred after the floor price was introduced, that I went from dealing with, on a day-to-day basis, blown up pillows being left around the service that I used to have responsibility for, to picking up smashed and broken bottles, to dealing with broken people, to dealing with injuries and damage. There were so many things introduced at the same time that it would be impossible to know which of all of those things were the most effective. But we do know from experience that the introduction of police into bottle shops has been very effective. Before that, Pallies. What we also know is that Labor deliberately avoided checking compliance with the minimum unit price. 45, let me say that again, 45 grocery store liquor licences in the Northern Territory were never once checked by an inspector to ensure that the conditions imposed under the minimum unit price were actually being complied with. Available data highlights that the increases in consumption of higher content alcohol.
Take your seat. Leader of the Opposition, what is your point of order?
Speaker, 110 relevance. The question was to the Minister, does she support her government's scrapping of the minimum floor price unit?
I think she's answering it, but I'll let her continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So available data highlights increases in consumption of higher content alcohol products, with a 17% increase in standard spirits, a 36% increase in mixed spirits since the minimum unit price was introduced. There are no measurable benefits. There is no benefit to the minimum unit price in relation to the floor price for alcohol. Alcohol-related assaults have increased by 38% in the past 8 years under Labor. So clearly, the processes that were implemented are not helping. People aren't drinking less. Money is not the issue. They have changed what they drink. They have moved from soft boxes to hard spirits. They have moved to glass bottles, which are now weapons. What we need is real change, real impact, real effect, and the MUP was not it.
Member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to Transport Minister. Minister, I know my residents in Casuarina want to feel safer when they catch the bus. Minister, can you please update the House on how the CLP government has taken immediate action to make our buses safer when the Labor sat on their hands did nothing?
Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Casuarina for the question. A very important question it is too. And let me start by saying this, Madam Speaker. Our government is delivering where Labor failed. This issue around bus driver safety was raised with the Labor government back in 2023. And what did Labor do? Well, I can tell you now, Madam Speaker, they didn't do much at all. Because bus drivers across the Territory deserve to feel safe at work, and under our government they finally are. When we took office, we found a mess left by Labor. Now, out of the 79 buses working across the network here in Darwin, when we came into government, only 17 of those screens had been fitted to those buses. This was after it being raised in 2023 by the drivers and the Transport Workers Union. Those drivers came to me along with the Transport Workers Union not long after we came into government, after that horrible attack on Bimmel where the vision was seen the person climbing over the screen and kicking him in the head. Labor had stalled the progress on these bus screens for months, leaving them exposed to violent attacks and, of course, passengers at risk. But not just passengers, Madam Speaker. Imagine a bus driver coming into a bus stop and someone climbs over the screen and kicks him in the head, and he's driving into a bus stop full of kids waiting to go home from school. It's something I can't imagine, I don't want to think about. But we weren't going to let it stand, Madam Speaker. We moved quickly to get the job done. And today I'm very proud to say that across the bus network in Darwin and in Alice Springs, all of those drivers' screens have been installed and upgraded. Every single bus, Madam Speaker. And this was done 2 weeks ago. So this is something that happened weeks and weeks back. But the department made the decision on instructions from our government to get in and help CDC get this done. The Department of Logistics and Infrastructure worked extremely constructively with the Transport Workers Union and the bus service to make sure that these issues were resolved. And we made the commitment to put additional security guards on those buses whilst those screens were being installed to make sure that we protected those drivers. But this isn't just about installing screens, Madam Speaker. We've also committed to tougher laws. Under the CLP government, mandatory sentencing for assaults on frontline workers is now in place. If you assault a bus driver, or any frontline worker for that matter, Madam Speaker, you will now face real consequences. No more excuses, no more slaps on the wrist. The people of the Territory have been very clear in their message to us, and that is to make the Territory safer, rebuild our economy and restore our iconic lifestyle. And we're delivering on that, Madam Speaker, and we're doing it where Labor failed to do that for years.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is for the Minister for Police. Minister, last week it was reported that an NT police officer was back on duty after charges relating to the death of his partner were dropped. Her death was caused by an untreated head injury that required some form of trauma, likely a hit to the head. There were many disturbing elements about this case that were reported, including that in the 5 years before her death, 17 domestic violence complaints were made in the 5 years to the police. The victim had documented in her diary and emails the physical abuse he was committing. She felt there was, quote, no point reporting her abuse by her partner to the NT Police because, quote, he would be informed of the complaint and she would have to deal with the consequences. The coroner in her death criticised the decision not to establish a crime scene after her death, saying the word of a fellow police officer weighed more heavily than it should. And the coroner also said domestic violence perpetrated by serving police officers is considered to be a significant issue and police appear to struggle with investigating their own members. Minister, does the NT Police have a problem with their attitudes regarding men's violence to women? And can women, particularly women whose partners are in the police force, feel safe to report DV to the NT Police?
Minister for Police.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Nightcliff for the question. Speaking to your generic questions at the end, member, our police force is a strong and important institution to the Territory, and I stand by them as they do their work in making our community safe. Now, you've raised a number of allegations and matters of which I don't have the detail, but what I can say is, of course, like any institution, there's a continuous journey of improvement and reform across a range of areas, and we've seen many of them play out publicly for our police. If you're after something from me, some form of public condemnation, you're not going to get it. Could there be areas for improvement? I'm sure there could be, just like anywhere else. But I don't have the detail that you're seeking, and I certainly stand by our police force who work hard every single day doing an incredibly difficult job. They leave their families every day to go and protect ours, and for that they have my utmost respect. Their commitment to the Territory is profound, and the role they have to play now while crime is totally out of control is more important than ever before. So I commend our police for the good work they do. I can't speak to the issues you've raised, but certainly, I think if you're going to come into this parliament and make widespread allegations, you better have your facts straight.
Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Health. Minister, we know that under 8 years of Labor, long 8 years, our health system across the Territory has been unsupported and under pressure. Not only did Labor blow out the health budget by $280 million, they also failed to take action to support Territory doctors, nurses and patients. Minister, what is the CLP government doing to alleviate this pressure on our hardworking health professionals, including through a pharmacy scope of practice expansion?
Minister for Health. Stop the interjections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Fanny Bay for her question. And it was only just last month that the member for Fanny Bay and I were out in Parap announcing this great election commitment. And it seems that this is all we're doing at the moment, announcing election commitments. This is an important issue, Madam Speaker, because this election commitment will empower pharmacies to do more for patients. It includes additional services at community pharmacies to help improve access to care, such as treatments for up to 23 uncomplicated conditions such as acute nausea and vomiting, school sores, mild to moderate allergic skin conditions, simple wounds and ear infections, as well as increasing the range of vaccines available. Community pharmacists are highly trained and highly regulated health professionals who have the skills, the knowledge and the competence to provide additional services to patients. Additional training for the program will leverage off existing accredited training programs already in scope in Queensland. Under licence and MOU, and our Territory pharmacists will undertake this training via the James Cook University. This will increase our national consistency and reduce costs to the Northern Territory. Unlike members opposite, the CLP government recognises that we can't spend taxpayers' money on pet projects and wasteful nice-to-haves. We're putting the money where it's needed most, Madam Speaker. Our government has committed $1 million to support additional essential training for Territory pharmacists in the Territory as a leading Australian jurisdiction in the delivery of primary health care. Under the Enhanced Scope of Practice program for community pharmacists, Territory families will get easier access to medicines and vaccines. This will save time and money for families and take pressure off the GP waiting times. These measures will alleviate pressure on primary care services and hospital emergency departments and be more convenient for patients, reducing time and costs.
These initiatives encourage pharmacists to play an active role in increasing patient access to care while reducing the burden on other health services for conditions that can be safely managed by pharmacists. Unlike the former Labor government, we are serious about supporting and protecting our esteemed health professionals and all sectors of the health fraternity. We are addressing the inaction of the former Labor government's unprecedented and outrageous health overspend. The former minister, now the opposition leader, overspent the budget by $280 million, Madam Speaker, in just 1 year. 1 year, Madam Speaker, $280 million overspend. $280 million overspend. So we are prioritising the health of Territorians by empowering community pharmacists to do more with their patients.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, my question is for the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, under your proposed Territory Coordinator Bill, you tried to sneak past Territorians, by the way. You plan to give yourself step-in powers to make statutory decisions in place of relevant ministers. Why do you need these unprecedented additional powers, Chief Minister, and which of your ministers do you not trust to make decisions?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm glad to get a question on the Territory Coordinator because it is such an important piece of reform, and I think the bit that Labor don't understand, or I suppose the bits that Labor don't understand, is that status quo is going to deliver us more nothing, which is what Labor delivered. More debt, no projects, no jobs. So this is a model that's been taken, the good bits have been taken from South Australia, from Queensland, where other jurisdictions are forging ahead to make themselves more competitive. And what the Territory Coordinator legislation does is allows a sequence of decision-making to escalate as the need arises. So, for example, and I've used this example on radio before and in other public forums, but if you wanted to build a large-scale solar farm or any solar farm, you would need various types of permits and approvals. You would need to get a land clearing permit, you might need to get a water licence, you might need to get a non-pastoral use permit. All of those different processes and permits require different consultation, expenditure, time, energy, and one often has to precede the other, and so you get big blowouts in time delay. What the Territory Coordinator can do is recognise, okay, Project A wants to build a solar farm. What approvals do they need? Okay, 3 of them require public consultation. We're going to allow one big piece of community consultation to take place in replace of the 3 separate ones on all 3 topics. Now, that's just smart. It's efficient. It's competitive. It allows us to move through processes properly and prudently and bring the community on those journeys and give people all of their rights to have their say without the excessive delay and cost and duplication. That's exactly what we've been elected to deliver. Reducing crime, rebuilding the economy, restoring our lifestyle. 3 things we took to the election. This is the flagship on rebuilding our economy. And so we're not going to apologise for going out to 3 months exhaustive public consultation where everyone can have their say, including the people who stood out the front and protested this morning that the sky's falling down if we do things a bit differently in the Territory. They can have their say as well, and we'll hear them out. And then after that, the Scrutiny Committee, of which Labor is a member, and the crossbench can also then have another go at it. This thing will be well ventilated, and I'm proud of that because we are absolutely committed to driving the economic reform the Territory needs. There does need to be an escalation of powers, and the point really is to never have to use them. It's a carrot and stick model deliberately designed to put decision-making back in the hands of our public service and making it easier for them to be more agile and responsive. But where we need to increase, we will, because the Territory's future is too important to ignore.
Supplementary, Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, supplementary to the Chief Minister, the Territory Coordinator position, as you've outlined, will go through a set of processes. Can you assure Territorians that processes such as the Sacred Sites Act will not be overlooked by the Territory Coordinator position?
Chief Minister.
Yep, that's all. You mustn't have read my guide to the Territory Coordinator Opposition Leader because there's very clear legislation that's been exempted from consideration. And what we have is an overarching primary principle of this legislation around from prioritising something. So it might just be that the Territory Coordinator directs a prioritisation of a particular project because of its significance. It might then ask for a progress update on that decision-making process to give the nudge, like, I'm watching this, you need to move faster, please give me a progress update. Then they might ask for a decision, so they might say, okay, I've asked you to do this, you're not hurrying up, can you please make the decision by a certain amount of time?
Point of order.
It's around specifically the Sacred Sites Act, and would that be overlooked or not?
Yes,
by
please
this
answer the
position?
question, Minister.
Yep, it's all exempted from the Territory Coordinator legislation. The bit we've got out to consultation is whether or not people think heritage should be in.
Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Education Minister. Minister, for 19 of the past 23 years, Labor failed to save our children from drowning. They failed to ensure that our children learnt life-saving water skills in primary school. As a child, I nearly drowned at Wongai Falls. Fortunately, Oswim came to my school, Bachelor Area School, and gave free swimming lessons to the kids there, which taught me to be a confident swimmer. Minister, can you please update the House on how the CLP has delivered on our election commitment to fund free swimming lessons in schools to help prevent children from drowning?
Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for Blaine for the question, and I know that he is extremely passionate about swimming in schools after his near-drowning experience. I know he joined the Chief Minister in Parliament last week to announce our $3 million Swimming in Schools program to begin for the opposition leader, if you're listening, term 1 next year, which I note, Madam Speaker, she's not listening to the answer, so I'll just repeat, term 1 next year, opposition leader. So the program will see all children in years 1 to 6 develop swimming and water safety skills for free. Government and non-government schools will receive funding to provide free swimming lessons, as well as funding to cover transport costs if required. So no child will miss out, Madam Speaker. For remote schools with limited access to pools, tailored programs will be developed utilising both public and privately owned pools. And I do note that in the opposition leader's electorate, the Territory Manor have come to the party, Madam Speaker, and they are allowing Mataranka school students and nearby students to use their
Opposition
schools.
Leader, we know it's exciting, but
for example, last week I also visited the Discovery Holiday Parks pool in Katherine, which we'll be partnering with to ensure Katherine students have access to a pool while our community pool is out of action. The department is working very closely with Royal Lifesaving NT and has already identified those remote schools that will need extra support and innovative solutions to develop the right program for that school. The member for Blaine spoke about visiting Wongai Falls as a child and getting into trouble because he lacked swimming schools. This is an all too true story in the Territory that could turn into a nightmare for some families. We have an amazing outdoor lifestyle here in the Territory, whether it's visiting our beautiful waterfalls at Litchfield or the hot springs in Katherine, fishing or cooling down just in our backyard pools. Water is a part of the Territory lifestyle. So yet less than 5% of our Year 6 students meet the National Swimming and Water Safety Benchmark, which is shameful. What is even worse is the NT has the highest per capita drowning rate in Australia, more than 3 times higher than the national average, which is shocking. And yet for 20 years, we've not had compulsory swimming lessons in the NT, despite swimming and water safety education being a part of the national curriculum. It is not good enough and we must do better. I know that the member for Blaine also joined the Chief Minister at Woodruff Primary School, transition students when they completed their Learn to School classes at the Goldfish Bowl in Palmerston. So for transition students, Madam Speaker, parents relinquished the $100 sports voucher plus paid $20 on top of that to attend the swimming lessons. This actually means that these children get swimming lessons for free.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is a question for the Minister for Corrections. Can you confirm that the family violence program is no longer being offered to people in community? My understanding is this means a court can no longer order an offender to do this program as part of a supervised sentencing order. This program was designed to address family violence, was gazetted under the Sentencing Act, and its aim was for participants to learn that family violence is a crime and not acceptable. Can you confirm whether this program has been ceased?
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, what I can say is that Labor have left us with a corrections crisis right across the Northern Territory. For 8 years, they ignored the growing problems. They did nothing, and as the prisons become overcrowded, and they overflowed into our watch houses, which is again affecting the police, keeping the community safe. So, Madam Speaker, we, the CLP government, have been in the office for about 13 odd weeks, and we have got a master plan. We are doing something about this. We are taking steps to fix this. We are taking steps, Madam Speaker, to fix this corrections crisis. Our first step is to immediately take action to reduce this overcrowding by creating additional beds and returning the watch houses back to the police.
Take
we
your
are
seat,
going
Minister.
to expand the long...
Take your seat, please.
Sorry.
What's your point of order, Member for Johnston?
Standing Order 110, relevance. I ask whether you can confirm whether this program has been cut or is continuing. Thank you.
Member for Johnston, he's got 2 minutes. We're all allowed a preamble in our answers at some point, but Minister, you have the call.
Thank you. I was just talking about the preamble about the crisis that the Labor government failed. Madam Speaker, what I can say is we haven't cut any programs. What we are doing, Madam Speaker, is we're trying to make sure that we're going to expand the long-term capacity so this crisis doesn't happen again. This crisis doesn't happen again because the Labor government failed to invest in infrastructure. For 8 years, they did nothing. Our prisons got fuller and fuller and fuller, overflowed. They knew this was happening, Madam Speaker, but they didn't do anything. Madam Speaker, there are currently 40 active providers of programs and activities for youth detention centres in the Northern Territory. They are right across the Territory, and I can run through a bit of a list for you if you'd like, Madam Speaker. Arafura Driving School, Balanced Choice, Basketball NT. So just to answer your question, we haven't cut any programs, but these are the programs which are up and running at the moment. Build Up Australia, the Catholic Church, Dream Impacts Inspire, Elevate Hoops, which is hooping, First Steps Development Enterprise, Good Dog AAI, High Calibre Sports, Hoops for Health, Inner Door Yoga, Monster Ball, Nitro Table Tennis, 1%, Pause Australia, Red Dust Strong Young Women and Girls Program, Rhythm and Reason, Sound ED, Territory Youth Empowerment, Boxing Fit NT, Top End Critters, Top End Tunes, Tropical Tunes, YMCA...
Minister, please take your seat. I think the Leader of the Opposition got the first jump there. What's your point of order?
Thank you. 110 relevance. I believe the member for Johnston, Madam Speaker, asked about adult correction program. The Minister is talking about youth justice correction program. So I'm just saying if he can answer her question.
Minister, I think you've got the call. You have answered the question, essentially, in saying there were no cuts, so how you use the rest of your time is really up to you.
Thank you. What I am going through is I'm explaining how this crisis, which was caused by the Labor government, has been rectified by this government. We've been in office for some 13 weeks and we have had a decisive plan and we're taking steps to do this because, Madam Speaker, this is not about just locking people up. This is about these wraparound services because what we want to do, is what Labor failed to do, is break the cycle of offending. We want to give these prisoners an opportunity to come out of their detention a better person, have skills to be able to go back into the community and add into the community, have valuable input. Unlike the Labor government who just locked them up and just failed them and did nothing. We want to make sure...
Thank you. Member for Drysdale.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Corrections. Minister, the CLP government has taken decisive action to address the urgent need for increased correction capacity by releasing the Corrections Infrastructure Master Plan. Minister, can you please provide an update on the progress of the plan and outline how this is delivering on the CLP's commitment to reduce crime?
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and this is a great question. I can continue on because literally, Madam Speaker, we could talk for hours about the CLP's plan to rehabilitate these offenders to make them better people. We want to make sure you don't just rack them and stack them like the Labor government did and in and out. We want to be able to give these young offenders and the adult offenders a better opportunity to make better choices as they move through their life cycle. Madam Speaker, we are well underway in relation to our infrastructure plan. We've already moved the youth detainees from the old Don Dale to the new purpose-built youth detention centre in Holtz. Madam Speaker, which I must say is 2 years late and $70 million overspent because this Labor government failed to manage it properly. They were in government and they misspent $70 million of taxpayers' money. Remember, governments don't make money, we spend money, Madam Speaker. They mishandled this program so badly that it was 2 years late and $70 million overspent. What we've done now, Madam Speaker, is we've put these young offenders into that facility. And unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the work done by the previous government wasn't up to standard and this facility was damaged. In fact, it was damaged in 27 minutes. After all the experts in this government said, we've made this facility purpose-built, 27 minutes later, damaged beyond where you can't put the children back in there. They had to move them out and fix it because it became dangerous. It was damaged to such extent, Madam Speaker, where live wires were exposed. So it just goes to show, Madam Speaker, this Labor government have failed Territorians. I had an opportunity to travel around the Territory, Madam Speaker, and to visit these facilities firsthand. I went to Alice Springs Correctional Centre, the Alice Springs Youth Detention Centre, the Paperbark Alcohol and Drug Rehabilitation Facility. I went to the new Residential Justice Barclay facility with the member for Barclay. I went to the Barclay Work Camp. We went to the Holtz Detention Centre and to the new Holtz, the old Holtz Correctional Centre. And, Madam Speaker, what I want to say is about how good the staff were. They go above and beyond because they look after these people who are in there and actually care about them, Madam Speaker. They want them to be better people as well. And unfortunately, the Labor government failed to support them as well. But I just want to have a really big shout out to the staff that I met on my tours around the Northern Territory. Do an exceptional job. So if you are listening, thank you for your support. I know that the Labor government have failed you, but we have got your back. We're going to make sure that we support you, just as we're supporting the police, because it's important. It's important, and we want to make sure that you've got the facilities you need to look after the prisoners and look after yourself, because we want to make sure that the prisoners have got these services and wraparound services, and also the staff operate in a safe facility. So our long-term plan is to be able to focus on rehabilitation. We want to create beds. We want to create new facilities to be able to give these people an opportunity.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, you've staked the CLP's economic credibility on giving yourself and an unelected bureaucrat unprecedented power to interfere in good governance in Northern Territory projects. You told the media you would give the Territory Coordinator, quote, a wink, end quote, when you want him to step in on a project. Chief Minister, will you be upfront and tell Territorians which projects you intend to give the Territory Coordinator a wink about when you want him to bypass important legislative and statutory and regulatory safeguards?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I think it really shows the level of or lack of depth we've got on the other side. Not only have they not read the bill or the exposure document that we consulted on that they tabled in Parliament, nor have they read the guide. We even wrote a guide to the bill for those who don't want to digest the legislation. They could read the very easy to read plain speak guide.
Take your seat. She's only been on her feet, what, 24 seconds? What is your point of order?
Speaker, just to clarify, we tabled the consultation paper,
that's not a point of order. Do not interrupt the Minister. She's got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That's what makes it even more embarrassing, because you tabled it and you didn't read it. You didn't understand it. You still don't understand it, and you even just asked me a question about whether it would include sacred sites, which it does not. The discussion paper said it wouldn't include sacred sites. The bill says it doesn't include sacred sites. The guide says it doesn't include sacred sites, and you still ask me. So I would suggest, just as a matter of good governance, as you called it, to do your homework. Read the documentation. It doesn't include sacred sites, heritage, or Aboriginal land rights. We're asking people for their feedback on heritage.
Can you just sit down? Enough chitter-chatter from over here. My left ear works incredibly well, unfortunately, so I can hear it all. So let's focus on what the Chief Minister's answer is.
The member for Barclay's just offered a briefing. I don't think it's going to help. You either have to want to learn or you don't. And I think the questions we've received today speak volumes. Like I've said, we're really proud of the Territory Coordinator. It's going to be the most consulted on, well-ventilated piece of economic we've seen in a decade, Madam Speaker, and we're incredibly proud to be delivering a more competitive Territory. It's perfectly in line with our vision for the Territory. We've made payroll tax. We've made the Territory the most attractive jurisdiction in the country on payroll tax. From 1 January, 200 more small businesses will say goodbye to those bills, and we will lift that threshold, making us an attractive place to do business here. We've got the most competitive home builders scheme in the country. Again, making the Territory the most competitive place to build a home. This is exactly what the course we're charting for the Territory. That's the work we've been doing over the last 13 weeks. And I can tell you the amount of work that's gone into the Territory Coordinator legislation is huge. And I take that opportunity to thank my department. Department of Chief Mins have really led the charge on this. They've been out there engaging with all of the other agencies who are as excited about this as we are, providing all of their feedback. Because you know what, Opposition Leader, Territorians want change. That's why there's been a change of government. They're sick and tired of being told about projects that are going to happen that never happen. They're sick and tired of being told that crime's a figment of their imagination. They're just sick of it. What they want is leadership and change. That's exactly what we're delivering. You can have your say, just like everyone else, but go and read the guide and do us all a favour. Find out what you're talking about.
Member for Goyder.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Land, Planning and Environment. Minister, illegal dumping of waste such as broken down fridges, washing machines, old tyres and household rubbish by lazy grubs is a significant issue across the Territory, especially in your home of Alice Springs. Minister, in your role as the Minister for the Environment, what are you doing about illegal dumping of waste?
Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Goyder for the question. Madam Speaker, illegal dumping is not okay, and it is something that has been occurring right across the Northern Territory for far too long. There is nothing I dislike more when I'm out on my mountain bike or with the Heart Foundation Heart Walk on a Saturday morning. There is nothing I dislike more than coming across an illegal dumping site. But unfortunately, this is the reality for far too many people right across the Northern Territory. This government, Madam Speaker, is doing something about this. For far too long, this has not been a priority of government, and we are working. We have drawn a line in the sand, Madam Speaker, and we are saying enough is enough. Just last week, Madam Speaker, I was fortunate enough to be out standing shoulder to shoulder with the Alice Springs Council Rangers. This is an issue that they come across far too often when they are out there working. They come across illegal dumping and they are always working tirelessly to find out who is doing this and how they can ensure that we can bring these people to justice. Crown Land, which I'm very proud, through my role as Minister for the Departments of Lands, Planning and Environment, to have charge of, quite often have to deal with these dump sites as it relates to Crown Land. And just the other day, we were out at a dumping site. We stood there, Madam Speaker. There were chest freezers, there were even 2 lawnmowers, Madam Speaker, that have been illegally dumped. This is happening at a commercial scale, and it needs to be stopped. We stood there, and whilst we were there with the Council Rangers, they went through that rubbish and they were able to actually pull out some identifying material that we will then be following up with, hopefully, Madam Speaker, to be able to enable a prosecution. Because we need to send a message loud and clear that illegal dumping is not okay. Whilst there, Madam Speaker, we spoke about the importance and what our department are doing. Since coming to government, one thing that I've noticed is that government departments love an acronym. And Don't Be a Dumper, or DBAD, is the latest acronym that they have come up with to ensure that we are raising this as an issue and that everyone knows that it's not all right. The department have been putting cameras out at these known locations, Madam Speaker, and this is part of the work that the Don't Be a Dumper committee have been working on. They know the hotspots, especially around Alice Springs and where these people are illegally dumping. So they are putting in cameras. We are reminding people through additional signage that it is not all right. We will be catching people and we will be prosecuting them, Madam Speaker, because this is the sort of thing that is not all right. It needs to be reinforced, and we need to ensure that everyone knows that this sort of behaviour will not be tolerated. Thank you.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that any further questions be placed on the written notice paper.